who've attended our previous sessions. The last ones were when is the right time, and then how to prepare. We had some fantastic insights and lots of thoughtful conversation. And both of those sessions are now up on YouTube. So today's conversation is about bringing clarity to a topic that can often feel overwhelming, which is for a major life transition. Whether you're supporting a loved one or you're planning your own next chapter, understanding what to expect financially from costs to moving expenses to legal preparations can bring a sense of control and peace of mind. If you joined us last time, you'll remember we talked about how moving, and especially after many years in the same home, is a process, it's not a single event. Our experts shared how overwhelming it can feel at first and how helpful it is to take small informed steps forward. One of the main themes that came through loud and clear was how valuable it is to talk early and openly with your family and trusted professionals. Today's session builds on that by focusing on the financial side of those decisions and starting those important conversations. And that's exactly what we are going to do. So we've brought together another fantastic group of panelists who work with seniors and communities. We know these decisions are deeply personal and they can feel complex, but our goal today is to make this topic a little bit easier to understand. Maybe it helps you to start having a conversation or just jotting down some notes today to revisit later with your family. But before I introduce our guest speakers, let's just get into that housekeeping piece. So there is a chat on the side. Feel free to say hello in the chat. We'd love to see who's here. If you have any questions throughout the session, please enter them in the chat and we'll address as many as we can when we get to the Q&A portion. And then don't forget to participate in the polls. There's 4 of them that will launch. And the first one is going to launch right away here. So you'll see that pop up and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, so I am truly honored to introduce the professionals who are joining us today. Thank you so much for your time. I know everyone is so busy, so we do truly appreciate it. And each one of you brings years and often decades of experience in their field, and they all share a common passion for supporting their clients through life's big transitions, whatever they may be. Now I'm going to introduce our first panelist, Lexi Glass, a financial advisor. Lexi has worked in the financial services industry for over 2 decades, starting her career at Stroud Agencies. She went on to earn her life insurance and mutual fund qualification and now leads LGK Wealth Management, Inc. She specializes in helping individuals and families make informed decisions about their insurance and investment needs with a focus on long-term planning and financial security. So welcome, Lexi. We have Sasha Cooper. She's the Director, Community and Business Development at Canterbury Foundation. Sasha joined the Canterbury Foundation in 2020 as Business Development and Licensing Manager. With an extensive background in marketing, new business development, client services, and brand development, she brings a passion for people and relationship building, a creative eye for design, and a strong commitment to delivering the promise of home to both current and future residents of Canterbury. Welcome, Sasha. And then we have Michael. Michael is a seniors real estate specialist and founder of Next Home Hub. With over 2 decades of experience in the housing industry, he is dedicated to supporting older adults and their families through later life transitions. Motivated by his own experience as part of the sandwich generation, Michael built Next Home Hub to connect seniors with trusted resources and expert guidance, helping them make informed, confident decisions about their next move. Then we are also joined by Helen Werbicki. Helen is a lawyer with a diverse background in real estate, wills, estates, and small business law. After managing family businesses for over 16 years, she pursued her law degree at the University of Alberta. She now brings a practical, client-focused approach to legal issues affecting seniors and their families, with a growing practice at Morrison LLP, focused on real estate, estate planning, and small business matters. And then finally, but definitely not least, we have John Watson. He is the 3rd generation owner and president of Eager Beaver Moving and Storage. He began working alongside his father at the age of 15 and officially took over the business in 2012. Under his leadership, the company has expanded from a modest 2-truck operation to a fleet of 18 trucks. And we also have a 20,000 square foot indoor storage facility, as well as 100 portable container units. Early in his career, John worked closely with senior clients, gaining lasting insight into the compassion, care, and patience these moves require. And that experience has shaped the company's ongoing commitment to supporting the senior community and the network of senior living facilities that help lay the foundation of Beaver's business. So welcome, everybody. Let's get into the discussion. Let's get into the questions. And so the first question is for everybody. This is a general question. So I think this is a big one. It's always about, what's that one piece of advice we can give people that we wish everyone knew? And so that's what this question is. What's one piece of financial advice you wish more people had early on in planning for their retirement, living or moving? So let's start with you, Lexi.
I think the biggest piece is that people focus more so on what they've saved, but underestimate how much they'll actually net after taxes and inflation and things like that. And also how much things will actually cost in retirement, especially if they do move. So I think cash flow is king in retirement. And a big retirement account balance or like a dream location doesn't matter if your monthly numbers don't work. So it's really becoming more granular as you get closer to retirement or you're in retirement and you're going to relocate, knowing what all of those numbers are going to look like.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. Sasha, would you like to chime in?
I absolutely would. So yeah, I've spoken with so many new residents as they're, onboarding into this thing called seniors community retirement living. And, through those conversations, I think the one piece of advice that would apply to really anybody that's coming into a seniors community is to build a financial plan when you're kind of in those planning stages that includes flexibility for changing needs. Because as we age, we know inevitably that care needs and support needs are probably going to evolve. So it's really about future-proofing, your retirement so that you're not caught off guard when those care and support needs inevitably do change.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to you, Michael.
So, yeah, I think there's a bit of a common thread through all of us that you're probably going to hear, but I think that planning, the earlier you start planning, the better. I think that many seniors wait until they're in a crisis situation or health issues or what have you. And when you're making those decisions so quickly, the costs go up. Right. And your options go down and the costs go up. So I encourage clients to speak with financial planners, real estate professionals, even years in advance, and developing a plan, no matter what that looks like, with a couple of different options, because you don't know if you're going to fall and break a hip. You don't know if you're going to, just be healthy and be able to truck along. Right. And so if this happens, then this, right? Or this. But if you understand the path forward, knowing some of the pitfalls that might come forward, then you will be in control. And I think that's the scary thing, is when people, the control is taken away from people, and then they have to make rash decisions that end up costing them more in the long run.
That is such a good point. And honestly, that whole preparation conversation that we had last session was really about that. Start years earlier, and even finding those trusted professionals that are the ones that are right for you, because I think finding a right fit is really important as well. All right, Helen, let's move on to you.
Well, everybody's already taken all of my points. I don't know what else I'll talk about. So yeah, I'd say the same as everybody else. For anything that's retirement related, even just aging related, you need to identify and set a plan in place ahead of time. You need to identify your trusted people And honestly, the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to get. I know a lot of people look at the costs of putting things in place and are kind of horrified. And on my side of things, I do wills. Nobody likes thinking about passing away. But speaking from experience, there was a definite sense of relief for me once I had my plan in place. I knew what was going to happen. Well, most as much as I could. Um, if something happened to me, it just felt like very freeing. It's like, okay, I've got that locked in. I know what's going to happen and who's going to do it, and now I can focus on the rest of my life up until the next milestone, kind of thing. So.
That's great. Thank you. Before I get to John, I just want to let everybody know that so that you can see every panelist's face, on the left-hand side, there are arrows at the bottom and the top of the screen, so you can toggle to see who's talking. Okay, so we are going to move on to John to provide some insight, and I'll just repeat the question. So what's one piece of financial advice you wish more people had early in the planning process for retirement living or moving?
I might be the worst person to ask for financial advice, so I'll just contribute a joke, which would be to take really good care of your kids as they're growing up and make sure they get good jobs, and then be really nice to them as you're aging.
That is good advice. Have good relationships. I love it. Okay, we are going to move into our individual panelist questions. And so there's 3 questions for each panelist. And we're going to start with you, Lexi. Again, Lexi is a financial advisor, and you have helped so many clients navigate the financial realities that come with aging. And I've known Lexi for many years, and in fact, she's a financial advisor, so I'm supposed to say because she really is a wealth of knowledge. And having a financial advisor as somebody on your team to discuss and plan for the senior chapter of your life is so important. So Lexi, your first question is, how can seniors figure out what's financially realistic for them long term, especially when planning for housing and care needs?
This is a really great question. This is a big question, but I'll kind of kernelize it and sum it up in a couple points. Figuring out what's financially realistic long term is critical for seniors, especially when housing and care needs can change over time. Sasha kind of already, hinted towards, the change factor. Here's a practical approach that blends some financial planning points with personal needs. One would be to start with a detailed budget, which is maybe a projection of the current status or today's needs, as well as a future projection, just to try to get an idea, become aware of like where that person is at right now versus what they may need in the future. So we would want to break down their current fixed and variable expenses as much as you can. So that might be your housing, your food, your utilities, healthcare, transportation, insurance. The other thing to consider is, will housing costs go up or down? Because people might be downsizing, they might be upsizing, they might be renting, they might be going mortgage free, and that would really affect cash flow down the road. Will healthcare or in-home help become necessary is in today's world a big concern for our aging parents, grandparents. And then, of course, factoring in inflation, because inflation can act like cancer. We've seen the last couple of years, the cost of living just creep so intently. And so where is that going to go? And will we have enough money when we get there? The second point is evaluating housing options through a financial lens. So again, can you afford to stay in your own home, considering all of the cost factors? Would downsizing free up cash flow and simplify life? Depending on, future healthcare needs, maybe if there's family close or abroad, you have to think of those things too. Should I consider renting or owning? And then what about assisted living or long-term care homes, which of course between provinces, the prices vary so dramatically. So we have to think of those details as well. Also planning for care needs early. So when I'm working with clients now that are sort of going into retirement, we're already having those conversations. And when they're updating their will, it's another part of that conversation. It's kind of an extension of that. Have you planned for your long-term care needs? And that's kind of a part of your whole, where are you going to live, and the equity in your house, because we may have to fund such care from equity in the home. Long-term care insurance is also something that we may consider if it's available and affordable. The other thing is just knowing your sustainability withdrawal rate. So when people are starting into retirement, based on what they have working for them in their investments and cash accounts, what are they taking out, and is it sustainable? And if it's not, we may have to look at options like, taking out a HELOC or something from the equity in their home. So we have to kind of look at all of those things and almost do some scenarios as to what is the best, what's the most affordable option. So bottom line, realistically, planning comes from knowing your future expenses, estimating your income and assets conservatively, and being proactive about care planning before you need it.
That is a lot of great advice. And honestly, what I get from that is that having the conversation with your financial advisor and having different, plans in place, should this happen, should this happen. So I think there is so much there. We could continue talking about that probably for hours. But we're going to go to your next question. And that one is, how do aging and retirement affect life insurance decisions, and what should seniors keep in mind?
Another big question. Hard to do in a couple of minutes, but I'll attempt. So aging and retirement change the role of life insurance dramatically. If it's life insurance we're talking about, there's lots of different types, but I'll just click on life insurance today. So for seniors, the question shifts from how much do I need to do I still need it at all? And if so, what kind? So those are the questions I get asked like daily. I have this policy, I've had it for 40 years, it's this much coverage. Do I still need it? And if so, why do I need it? I think that reassessing the original purpose of the policy becomes kind of paramount. And the reasons that the client might have initially took the policy 40 years ago has obviously changed. So do they still need the policy? They probably don't have dependents at home. So there's a lot of things that have probably changed over time. But they might do an area where they want to provide still for their spouse if something happens to them, and they may want to leave a legacy. So we kind of look at those factors. In terms of legacy and liquidity, as you age, life insurance can shift from income protection, which would be the original purpose of that policy, that if something happened, it would provide coverage for their loved ones upon a premature death. It shifts from that to now estate planning and final expenses. And of course, it provides immediate liquidity upon death. So that would be to pay taxes on real estate and other illiquid assets. It's a form of a very liquid, quick payment. So we would also look at that. Evaluating cost versus benefit. If the overall benefit is fairly small, because again, they bought it so many years ago, and they've kind of outlived that policy, maybe there's a point in cashing it in if everything lines up for not really needing that coverage. So we would look at what the costs are versus what the benefits are from that policy. The other thing is that you don't want to overpay for what you don't need. So many seniors will hang on to policies just out of habit or fear, not a strategy. So I think that it comes down to talking to your advisor about what was the strategy for this policy. Is it to help for a grandchild? Is it to help for a disability? Is it to just equalize the estate? Or maybe it's just, again, for final expenses. So we just need to look at those things. And I think the biggest thing is consider tax and government benefit impacts. In Canada, life insurance payouts are tax-free, depending on how they're structured. So to a spouse, estate, or trust. For low-income seniors, though, large payments don't count as income. However, if they do access cash value, that changes it. So it could affect certain payments down the road. And those are some pitfalls that people just have to be aware of. If they're canceling policies that are really flush with some nice cash value, and that's attractive, there will be a taxable disposition, which could essentially affect their government benefits.
Wow. I know that it's such a big conversation to have, but what I'm getting from that, everybody should take a look at what type of life insurance they have at this stage and then have that conversation to see whether it's the right one for them or what changes they need to make, and discussing that with their financial advisor. We have one more question for you and not a lot of time to answer it, but that's okay. If we move into our Q&A with all of this really good information, I'm good with that. So the last question we have is, how do you approach financial planning with clients who may have limited assets or are living primarily on government pensions or something of the sort?
So we generally are very careful with people that are just on government benefit, because as we know today, those are limited and sparse, and cost of living has just become so immense. So we have to be very practical. We have to be very empathetic and focus on maximizing stability and quality of life rather than trying to build wealth. So I think the first point would be start with a clear, judgment-free snapshot, understand their monthly cash flows, using their pensions and other sources of income, whether they have small savings, part-time jobs, rental income, things like that. List all the fixed and variable expenses, and then prioritize needs over wants to get a realistic sense of what's sustainable. So those are kind of the key issues. And of course, ensure the essential needs are being covered first, which would obviously be housing and food and healthcare. The second point to that is to be able to help maximize government subsidies, because there are quite a few that we look into. So there's things like the guaranteed income supplement or the GIS. There's provincial housing, drug, dental, and utility subsidies that are available depending on income levels. There's property tax deferrals or rebates that are offered. GST, depending on provinces, HST credits as well. So a lot of these programs are underutilized because a lot of people they're not aware that they actually exist. So again, if you're working with somebody, a financial advisor, planner, they should be looking at all of those aspects for lower income seniors. The third point is making your housing a top planning priority, just to make sure that in the long run it's sustainable and affordable. The other thing that, if we're looking at changing homes, would be looking at either downsizing or co-housing. That is a plan that exists out there as well. But the biggest point is plan for longevity and flexibility, because things can happen. And so to keep small savings, emergency savings, even if it's just small, and help them with the programs, I think, are the two biggest things that we can do, and just try to preserve their independence. So that's those are my tips and tricks.
I love it. Thank you so much. I mean, I think this just really highlights all of the things that a financial planner can help you with, no matter where you are with your planning, and helping you to get the resources that you might require if you are in sort of that lower income level. So thank you so much, Lexi. We are going to move on to Sasha. Sasha, she is the Director of Community and Business Development at Canterbury Foundation. Let's look at the structure of retirement communities and what costs people can expect. We did have a question about how much does it cost, to live in a senior's residence from our first session. That actually relates to your first question. So the first question for you is, are there different pricing models like rental versus life lease, and how do seniors decide what is right for them?
Great question. And, thanks so much for asking that, because it's an important one. And there are absolutely, different options in terms of pricing models out in the market. So I'll go over two of those models. The first one is your typical rental model. So this is where you would pay a monthly fee, depending on kind of what level you're in. That fee can include all kinds of things, from meals to housekeeping to laundry. Your payments in a rental model are really flexible. And, for adapting needs, like we've touched on a few times already, this is probably the best model, just with kind of that built-in flexibility. And then the next model is the life lease model. So this one includes kind of a larger upfront payment, and it feels kind of more like home ownership when all is said and done. It's obviously going to be a little bit less flexible than your rental model, and definitely more of a financial commitment. In regards to how would a senior possibly choose which is the right option for them, I think you really just, need to ask yourself, do you want flexibility or do you want more permanence? Are you comfortable with a large upfront cost? And then also a really important one is, again, right, planning for the future, building in that flexibility, knowing that inevitably as we age, our care and support needs are going to evolve a bit. So you need to really ask yourself, what might that look like into the future, and then try and plan for that as best you can when sort of making the decision between permanency or flexibility. So shameless plug coming, but at Canterbury, our model is a rental model, and we really feel strongly that this is kind of the right option, because it supports and again allows for that flexibility piece. Meeting seniors where they're at and evolving with them as their care needs continue to shift and change is really, really critical to ensuring that we're setting residents up for the chance to thrive, and also setting them up for as much independence as possible.
That's great. And so generally when people come to see you, you sit down with them, you go through everything, you give them all the options. And I'm assuming this conversation probably, it's just not an overnight decision either, right? You're, providing all of the information and, and then helping them to make a plan. And like this includes, whether you're moving into a facility, right, where it's more independent living, and then also should your needs change, should your care needs change, you're able to move through that facility, as things progress.
Absolutely. And, you're able to kind of to move sort of seamlessly through. and have the peace of mind that whatever, whatever stage you're at and whatever that looks like, that there is, the services and the care built in to support you no matter where you're at.
Okay, we're going to move on to your second question, Sasha. And that question is, what's typically included in monthly retirement community fees, and what additional expenses should people budget for?
So in most facilities, whether they are, public or private, you can kind of anticipate that those monthly fees, again, depending on what level of care you're at or what level you're living in, the fee will include obviously the rental of your suite. Typically your 3 meals a day plus snacks, and really, any kind, as much as you eat or as much as you want to eat, that'll be included in that fee. Housekeeping services, laundering services are included, again, depending kind of on that level that you're in. Typically what we see is sort of, if you're coming in kind of at that independent level, it is what it is. You're independent. Those inclusions are available, but those might be at an additional cost. But then when you kind of move into sort of that more supportive setting, things like your weekly laundering of your bed linens and your bath linens, as well as those daily housekeeping services, all of that would be included. 24/7 wellness support, as well as emergency response, is included. Your recreational programming, outings, that type of thing, that would all be included. And then finally, utilities, and then any sort of suite maintenance would be included in your monthly fee as well. When you're looking kind of at what additional things should I be budgeting for, things like personal care services, you might need to maybe budget a little bit of a fund for that. So a lot of seniors communities, Canterbury included, right? We cover, internet fees, cable television, but things like your phone, cell phone, that type of thing are typically things that you would need to budget additionally for. Any salon or spa visits, as well as personal items, you would also want to make sure that you're budgeting for as well. So one of the comments that we get often when we are working with families as well as seniors as they're kind of onboarding into a seniors community, once they sort of understand what that pricing is going to look like, is that they didn't realize how much they were spending at home until they kind of made the move into a community. And I mean, that's so true, right? Between your groceries and your utilities and your home maintenance. Retirement living, the beautiful thing about it is that it often consolidates those costs into one manageable and predictable monthly fee, which is great, and you can plan for it. So, I mean, in closing, it's really not just about what you're paying. It's really about what you're getting, and that quality of life and all of those kind of wraparound services being available to you in a one-stop shop, like a seniors community. You're getting, in addition to all of those kind of services, you're getting socialization, you're getting connection, and you're getting peace of mind, which is also kind of built into all of that.
That was such a good explanation. Thank you so much for that. And we're going to move on to your third question, your final one. And that's, if someone's financial situation changes over time while they're living, in a retirement community, how flexible are these organizations to help work with seniors who find themselves maybe in a financial difficulty? How do you help them?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I mean, flexibility really depends on the seniors community. So, in the public system, for instance, accommodation fees are set by the government. And they're based on the fact that there are numerous financial supports available for seniors in Alberta. Lexi kind of spoke to some of them earlier. So again, set fee that takes all of that into consideration, but also along with the fact that at this stage of life, seniors are typically no longer earning an active income. So with all that being said, in the public system, there's not a ton of wiggle room where that accommodation fee is concerned. But if you're looking at more of a private seniors community, like Canterbury, as well as some of the other options that are available, we really take a personalized and compassionate approach where we have a full care team available to both the resident and family. And this includes an on-site social worker, which is really huge because they can then work with the family as well as the resident to adjust care plans or also connect them with outside supports. Canterbury particularly is a little bit of a unicorn in seniors communities because we're private, but we're also a not-for-profit organization. So our donors and partners that donate to our community share our mission, ensuring that really no resident or senior is displaced due to hardship. So that's really great, and it also allows us the opportunity to really get creative, actually, in finding solutions if and when finances change. Which we can all anticipate kind of in this stage of life, that finances are going to change as things evolve. So, if and when all of those kind of supports have been accessed and affordability is unfortunately still an issue, that on-site support team would then fully support the resident and family if it boils down to transitioning to a different, community. If that affordability issue, once everything has kind of been checked off the list, is still a challenge at the end of the day. So another thing that I can offer is that proactive planning is just really key, right? We encourage families and residents to talk to us early and often so that we can just be in communication and kind of be that partner in helping them just plan and be proactive for what long-term kind of looks like, right? And all of those changes, that inevitably fall into sort of that long-term aging. So a quick example that I want to share is at Canterbury here, we actually have Alberta's oldest resident living with us. So she's 110 years old, if you can believe it. And I think her family, let alone, the resident herself, never imagined that she would live to such an incredible age. The great thing, though, is that we've worked with and continue to work alongside the family to ensure that she can call Canterbury home until her final days, right? And again, right, the family has just been really, really great in ensuring that we're just having those regular check-ins to kind of see where the resident is at financially. And also, just ensuring that all of those things are in place to ensure that she has the best life possible right until those final stages.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that was sort of the key piece that I was looking for, is that, you can have peace of mind. You're not going to be left hanging, that, the organization is going to find a way to help and find solutions.
Absolutely.
So that was great. A great share. Thank you so much for that. We're going to move on now to Michael Draper. Michael, a reminder, is a realtor with Maxwell Progressive. Michael, selling a home is often one of the biggest financial steps in this transition, and your experience supporting seniors through that process is really, truly invaluable. So let's explore what people should understand before making that move. You have 3 questions, and your first one is, how do you help seniors understand what they can expect to get for their home and how to plan around that?
Well, thank you for having me in this important panel and with some very good minds helping the seniors out there. I often talk about, in the presentations that I do, about developing your senior support dream team. And I think that we've got an invaluable one here as a great example to help people. So how can we expect or help people understand what they can expect to get from their home? Well, it starts with comparative market analysis of their home, but it goes a lot deeper than that. I think the most important factor in this whole thing is identifying who the buyer is going to be of that home. And every situation is completely different. Some people have been in their home for 40, 50, 60 years. And I've walked into many of these homes where on any Tuesday afternoon, you can eat off the floor. It's been impeccably maintained for 50 years, but it's got the original countertops and the original windows and the original, it's beautifully maintained, and these people live there comfortably, but the buyer for that home is likely going to either be an investor that's going to do a renovation, or possibly the lot value is worth more than what the home itself is. And so it's really, really important that people shift their mindset into looking at it as an asset for sale and not their home anymore. And that's the biggest challenge for people, because all of their memories, all of the Christmases, all of the birthdays, all of the, measuring their children on the door jamb, right? All of those things are in that home to them. And so it's an emotional asset. And instead of thinking of it as a financial one. So I think having kid gloves with people and being gentle with them at that time, and really helping them understand that those memories are going to be with them for the rest of they've got photo albums, they've got their family, all of that. But now it's time to look at how we're going to put you on your feet and help you for the next however many years you've got. And we need money to do that. And so this asset that you invested in many, many years ago, it's now time to look at it as a financial asset, right? So it's identifying who that right buyer is going to be and how we're going to maximize that value. The other thing that people do is often in those homes that are mostly original, they go, oh, well, if I paint or if I put new flooring in the rooms, I've got dusty rose carpets. What if I put vinyl plank in or hardwood? Well, but you've still got the oak kitchen with the yellow appliances and so you're spending money that you don't need to have. So it's been talked about, today. I think Lexi mentioned about the net, what you're going to net, here when you're spending money because you think you're going to achieve more for the sale. I don't think you necessarily are. You're spending money that you maybe don't need to spend, and you let somebody else do that at that time. So it's really assessing each individual's situation. Some people sold the family home 10 years ago and moved into a condo, and now they're looking for retirement, and that condo is beautiful and modern and all that. You don't have to do anything to it, and they have less of an emotional attachment. So each situation is completely different, and we need to address each one as it is. So it's really hard to paint this everyone with the same brush in this situation.
I love what you said, where it's sort of a mindset shift from home to asset.
Yeah.
I think that's a really key takeaway from what you just shared there.
Some people I've mentioned in the past in presentations is your home an anchor or an asset? And it gets to that point where it's becoming an anchor for them, and they're spending money, or they haven't been in the basement in 5 years because of their mobility, and then it's all this weight on their shoulders, and we want to turn that anchor into a financial asset to help them have the freedom to live moving forward, right?
That's great. And a good segue into the next question, which is, what cost should sellers factor in when preparing to list their home?
So again, each situation is totally different and independent, but preparing the home for sale, one of the things that I do for all of my people is I have a home stager that I pay to go and do a consultation with them and go, okay, we want this home ready to take magazine quality photos for the listing. So she goes room to room to room and helps them present each room as a magazine quality photos. Now, what I will say is, living in a staged home is terrible. It's a home that is staged for photos and to sell is not a home that you want to live in, right? And so I also talk to people about maybe taking themselves out of the home for the sale process, so they're not having to deal with keeping it clean, making the bed every morning, living in a home that's staged to present to buyers to achieve the highest price, right? So go on a holiday. We can do all the paperwork virtually. I've done deals with seniors on a beach in Hawaii where they've accepted offers, on their phone. And yes, seniors are technologically savvy, and I can make sure that you're able to do this. So that's the first thing. If you have the financial means and you're able to separate yourself from the home during that listing period, it would be a lot easier and a lot less stressful for you. So think about those costs. Legal fees and closing costs, obviously real estate fees, what you and real estate fees are always a contentious issue. People often focus on the commission and not on what they will end up netting and what you get for that. There's discount brokerages out there that you will do all the work yourself, and that they might not help you present the home in a way that you're going to achieve the most for it, and they might be that couple of $1,000s you might be saving on the commission is costing you even more on what you could get by going through a full service person as well. So it's really important to understand that price really matters with the absence of value, but if you're getting value, then that's something to consider. It's not as common in this demographic to have mortgages on their home, but some still do. And so depending on when that mortgage renewal comes, there might be some discharge fees or penalties that are along with that. So we need to understand that. And then moving expenses, which I'm sure John will talk about in his presentation here. So those are generally the costs to come. There could be bridge financing or temporary housing if there's a gap between selling and going as well. And then also thinking about where you're going to go. Like, with Sasha had so many great things to say about the different housing options. But what I will say is that every building is different. And in my experience, you go to one and they include, they'll have an additional occupant fee. The other one won't. You go to one that includes 2 meals a day. The other one includes 3, and then this one includes none. So through the Next Home Hub, I do offer a service where I've got a checklist where I'll take you to 3 different retirement residences, and then at a glance compare apples to apples so that you can actually understand how they compare to each other, and so you are making the best decision for yourself. And something, I don't know, Sasha's quite humble with what they do, but one of the unique things that Canterbury Foundation, through my experience with them, that they do is because they have 4 different levels of housing, they can keep couples together longer than any other building in the city, and they can find creative ways to keep them together. So it's really cool, and not many places will have the ability to keep people together. So if the spouses are still together, it's one of the best options in the city, in my opinion, for them. So
thank you so much, Michael. There was so much that came through that conversation. I think you actually answered question 3, and for the purposes of us staying on time, we're going to kind of move on. But I love that you pointed out that Canterbury can keep couples together. I think that is so important for people to know and understand, is that, if you and your spouse are still together and you want to stay together, that looking for retirement communities that allow for that to be a possibility. Okay, so thank you so much. We are going to move on to Helen, and I'll try and keep us on pace, Helen, so we can get through your questions. So Helen is a lawyer with Morrison LLP. Helen, legal planning gives families the protection and peace of mind they need during these times of change. So let's look at what's essential from a legal standpoint as seniors move forward. So the first question is, what legal documents should seniors have in place before selling their home or signing a lease with a retirement community? And how can they ensure that they are fully protected during these transactions?
Okay, so my first comment would be just to put a proviso on Michael's question 2, where he said he can do all of these documents virtually. I can sign the transfer of land for the sale up virtually, but you have to send me the wet ink documents. So you need to build in enough time in there if you're off to fantastic places for the courier to get those documents to me. So just as a proviso, please. Our land titles office is a little less flexible than the real estate agent side of things is. In terms of before selling their home, not so much having documents in place, but especially because it's a seller's market, as I understand it right now, we'd really recommend that you have a lawyer review your sale contract before you sign it, and just let us give you a heads up about any potential issues. Let us have that discussion with you. And the same thing goes for signing a lease with any of the retirement communities. Let us have a read through it and let us talk to you about it so you know what you're getting yourself into. The proviso with that is that we really need you to be transparent and open with us. I did have one client who was downsizing. They were buying before they were selling. They didn't disclose to their realtor and they didn't disclose to me, I think because they were embarrassed that their property taxes were 4 years in arrears. And so when we took that into consideration, there wasn't actually enough money from the sale to buy the house that they were moving to with all the payouts that they had to do, and they had to pull money suddenly out of their RRIF. So you really have to be open with us. It's not a judgment thing. It's like, I don't know, maybe you were helping a kid who's been out of work for 2 years and you got behind on stuff. That's not my responsibility to try and judge you on that. I'm just supposed to try and do my best to protect you in that transaction. So I really need you to be honest with me. If you're downsizing or moving out of province to Alberta or vice versa, we strongly recommend that you do not buy and sell on the same day, especially if you're relying on the proceeds from your sale to buy the next house. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First off, timing between provinces is different. So in BC, as far as I know, they have until 5 o'clock to conclude something. In Alberta, we only have until noon. So if you're selling in BC and buying in Alberta, you've already got a time disjunction there that you really need to pay attention to. And it's super, super stressful. So we really strongly recommend you don't do it that way. The other thing that we're seeing is that banks are starting to hold the lawyer's trust checks, which means that your funds are held up and it's a headache for everybody to try and get them released. In terms of protecting yourself, there's no way to fully protect yourself from everything that might come down the pipe, but the best thing that you can do is to have a plan in place with your trusted people and advisors, like we've said, and then not leave it until the last minute. Once you have a game plan, review and update it at least once a year or when there are life changes. It's the same kind of idea as having really good shocks on your car or having a gimbaled stove if you're sailing, where it kind of rights itself depending on what the situation is. And then you want to have your estate planning documents done. Your will, your power of attorney, and your personal directive are all really important. And I'd say as well, when you're selling your house, talk with your realtor because they'll pull the title, and talk with your realtor about what they see on the title. Because sometimes there's mortgages that were paid out years ago, but the bank sent the discharge statement to you and you didn't realize you needed to register it at the land titles office. So now the lawyer has to try and chase it down and get that payout. So it just gives you that heads up that something needs to be sorted because it's not sorted out yet.
That's great. I wanted to just touch on the question, what role do powers of attorney and personal directives play during this stage of life planning?
Okay, so you have to remember first that these are different between provinces. So again, if you move into Alberta, out of Alberta, you want those redone because they don't have the same things in them and they can be a pain in the butt to use. Excuse me, I probably shouldn't have said that. So powers of attorney are for financial decisions while you're still alive, and we can construct it in a number of ways. Traditional only takes effect when you're mentally incapacitated and can't make your own decisions. Immediate takes effect as soon as you sign. So I have immediate power of attorney for my parents because they have business interests here and they keep scarpering off to sunnier climes. So somebody has to be able to sign documents to them. This for the suckers. And then there's a hybrid where it takes effect immediately for your first choice, and then it only takes effect if you're incapacitated for your backup person. In terms of a general power of attorney only has effect as long as you're still mentally with it. And then an enduring power of attorney takes effect now and then continues despite any kind of incapacity. Personal directives are different. Those are only for your personal decisions like your healthcare treatment, where you live, who you associate with, and those can only take effect when you're mentally incapacitated. They're both crucial as you move forward. If you don't have them in place and something happens, then someone in your family or in your close circle has to apply to a court for a judgment or an order to allow them to act for you. It's a lot more expensive. It's a lot more stressful. It's a lot more uncertain. So I would strongly recommend you get those into place as soon as possible.
That's great. I hope you can answer your last question in 1
In
minute.
1 minute? Okay, I was afraid of that.
We don't miss that part. So the last question is, are there legal risks to consider when gifting or transferring property to family? What is like the high level thing people need to know here?
Talk to a lawyer and your financial advisor and your tax advisor, because it really depends on the situation. A lot of rural communities, they transfer the farmland into one kid's name because that kid farms, and then the idea is that he's supposed to disperse it when he sells it to everybody else. If he's married, if they get into a divorce situation, all of a sudden that's marital property because it's only his name on title. So that's a big thing. You can transfer it into a trust, but there's no trust documents, so they may treat it as their own property. Some kids may think that one kid is supposed to have had a loan, but the other kid said no, it was a gift. So just talk to your lawyer and your financial advisors before you do it.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Helen. We're going to quickly move into John. He's owner and president of Beaver Moving and Storage. Let's talk moving expenses. I know people always have questions. How much is it going to cost? So your first question is, what are the key cost components seniors should expect in a moving estimate? And what's the best way to compare quotes from different moving companies?
Well, the main cost obviously is going to be your labor components. So that's the cost of getting the truck and the crew out to site to load up the goods and transport them to the new place. But there's other items that typically show up on a moving estimate. One of those would be packing materials. So if you obviously need to box up your stuff, you are probably advised to do that in advance, or you can engage the company to pack your goods for you, but that will typically increase the cost quite substantially. It could almost double the move cost. And then other things, you could see something called valuation coverage. So it's very similar to insurance, but as it's not being sold by an insurance agent, registered insurance agent, it's called valuation. And that is really a way to get your goods covered in the event of damages, or let's say the truck gets into an accident or something like that. So that's something you might see on your moving estimate. And depending on how you feel about your belongings, you may want to consider purchasing one of those options, so that if something does happen, then you do receive some kind of compensation from the moving company. And lastly, you'll probably see fuel surcharges. So that's pretty common. That's just obviously the cost of, it could include fuel, but also depreciation of the truck, things like that are sort of wrapped into the fuel surcharge. So those are the main things. And then in terms of comparing quotes from different moving companies, there's a lot of different sort of tactics that companies use, I guess, to, try to win business. So some of the less scrupulous companies might not include fees that they then add on moving day, whereas others pride themselves on being transparent and upfront with all the costs. So you definitely want to ask the question, is there any other charges that, I'm not seeing in my estimate that may come up? So things like, the classics are, stair surcharges or bulky article fees. So that'd be something where, an extraordinarily heavy object carries an extra cost. So that's quite common. But the key is to know in advance if they have that sort of fee, and whether it's been included in the estimate or if they're going to slap it on later. Other things such as travel time are very common. So travel time is the cost of getting the crew from their office to the job site and then back. So movers are basically, almost all of them are paid by the hour. And a lot of people scratch their heads about travel time because they don't understand why they have to pay, the cost of the truck getting somewhere when it's empty. But really the crew is clocking in when they arrive at their workplace. And then, your house is not the same location. So it's very common for that to be showing up on the bill. Some companies will be upfront about it and explain it, and then others will kind of gloss over it, and then you'll be upset later when you didn't realize it was going to be on there. So those are kind of some of the basics.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, disposal fees.
Yeah.
For items.
Yeah. So if you want to get rid of stuff, there's obviously junk removal companies out there, but most moving companies will also offer that service. Since they're there already, they can probably do it for a little bit less than calling a whole separate service for it. So it's a good example.
Okay, your next question is, what factors affect the cost of a move, and how can seniors budget wisely?
So the biggest factor is how prepared you are when the movers arrive. So because everything is kind of being done on a clock, most companies are charging by the hour. You want to be as prepared as you can possibly be. The more stuff that you leave to the last minute and even leave for the movers to do, the more likely that your moving bill is going to increase unexpectedly. So when I say preparation, I mean, have a very clear idea of what you're bringing to the new place. We see with senior moves that, quite often the entire house is not being transported. They're just bringing enough to fill, the 1 or 2 bedrooms that their new suite has. So you just want to get really clear on what you are going to need. You don't want to bring too much stuff. So sometimes we'll leave, sadly, someone will have brought way too much furniture, way too many boxes, and you really can barely fit it all into the suite. And then, they're left trying to figure out like what to do with all this extra stuff. So I think in the interest of time, I'll just say that the biggest thing is to plan ahead. There's a lot of people out there that are now doing what they call like a senior move management role. So they can come in, weeks, months in advance of the move and sort of help go through everything that you have and decide like, okay, what do I really need at my new place? And, select only items that they're actually going to use, and, kind of go through that period where you're humming and hawing over things. And, there's a lot of your things are, sentimental to people. So, try to sort of have those decisions made well in advance of the moving company showing up.
Thank you so much for that. Your third question, we did go over time, but the webinar is still running, so hopefully everyone can stick with us. We're at our last question here before we close it up for today. So John, what if you can give us a few practical ways to make moving more affordable for seniors?
Well, I think it's going back to the previous answer, just, planning ahead, really trying to make a good effort to downsize, really identify those things that you're truly going to need at your new place and not try to take everything with you. And again, finding ways to get rid of your belongings well in advance of the move. So that could include passing things along to family, your kids, or identifying a service such as Habitat for Humanity that will actually come and pick up things that can be repurposed for somebody else. So if you want to donate things, you can usually arrange that in advance, and there's free services that will do that without you having to pay. So that's the biggest thing, is kind of just, downsizing in a cost-effective way is probably the number one way to reduce your moving costs.
Yeah, and shameless plug for us too. We actually have a seniors discounted rate for our seniors when they book with us. So that's just something that we feel is really important to be able to pass along to them. So thank you so much. We've gone a little bit over time. Thank you everybody who has showed up for every single one of these sessions. We truly appreciate it. That brings us to the end. A huge thank you to our panelists today for sharing your expertise. Thank you to our social media coordinator, Haley, for moderating and creating this beautiful presentation. And thank you for everybody who was in our audience today. This concludes the webinar series, but stay tuned for our upcoming webinars, which we will be announcing on our social media and in our newsletter. Remember that all 3 of these sessions for the Senior Moving webinar series, Planning Your Next Chapter with Ease, will be available for you to watch on our YouTube channel. And we also have links for every single one of our panelists so that you can go and visit their websites, get their contact information, and reach out to them if you have any questions. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks, Susan. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.